Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode for KinderWorks Sofa Series. Today we're joined by Sarah Henderson, who is owner and founder of Yolk Design. Welcome, Sarah.
Woo! Thank you so much for joining us today. So the topic for today's session is resilience, and my goodness, you have it in the bucket loads. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us. There's very challenging things that can happen in life, and you've definitely been through one of the hardest times. And through that, you've shown strength to really bring light to others who are also struggling. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your story, please?
Sure, yeah. Where to start, really? So I'm a mother, and more often than not, when somebody asks me how many children I have, I'd say 2. But actually, the truth is I have 3. My eldest is 7, my youngest is 4, and we had a daughter in between called Rowan. And I'd obviously been pregnant before, having already had my eldest daughter, and that all went absolutely fine. And it was funny actually, because the moment I knew I was pregnant with Rowan, something didn't feel right. And I remember going to the scans and not wanting to look because I was convinced something would be wrong. And my husband and the midwives were like, "Very ridiculous. Look, you know, everything's fine." And everything did seem fine until we went to the 20-week scan and we found out actually she had a condition that meant that she wouldn't be born alive. So the next kind of month was the hardest of my life without a shadow of a doubt. And I remember actually insisting, because at that point I'd only just started to feel her move, and I remember asking all the grandparents and my friends and everybody who knew me to come over because I knew that she could hear them, and I wanted her to hear the members of her family before she passed away. So she had a heart condition, and yeah, it was really, really hard. And as a mother, I know now that there are a lot of women who go through similar scenarios, but at the time you feel so alone. And you don't know, because nobody talks about it.
No, you're right.
It's you know that I do have friends that had been through the same or similar, but obviously I didn't know at the time, so I felt really alone and that I was the only one in the whole world going through this pain. Obviously I now know that that isn't the case, and was supported by a number of charities at the time. Both me and my husband were. And you know, I've been a graphic designer all my life, and I now support one of those charities by creating what we've termed to be shadow pictures. And I do this completely free. It's something that I just do, and the charity raise money by offering these to parents. So I basically take family portraits that they would choose and send in to me, and I add in their missing children, so that they can have family portraits with their missing children within them. And I make it really clear that I need to know the gender and the age that they would be now, so that I can represent them as they would be if they were. And obviously it's not them in the photo, but it's a representation of them. And it's proven to be quite therapeutic for me, and really helps the families. It's wonderful to hear the feedback of how it helps these families kind of cope with the grief and the loss of their children.
That's absolutely amazing and so inspiring that it's an incredibly traumatic thing that you've experienced. However, your focus is how can I help others through that time? And it sounds like you had a lot of great support from charities during that time. What sort of support did the charities offer you?
There was the charity in question is a charity called Saying Goodbye, and they organise services where they honour lost children, and they do them in cathedrals, and they're very big, beautiful affairs, and they offer lots of other extended support. They've got many arms to help people who are having children after loss. So obviously being pregnant again, and we went on to have another. That's a whole new scenario in itself. That's really hard. And they do a lot. The 2 founders actually have lost children themselves, so they entered it, I suppose, with the same feeling that I had. Well, I got through it somehow, and I want to help others perhaps not face the certain challenges that I had now, you know, how to make that better for them, really. So it's their life's work really to kind of help other families kind of come to terms with the grief and move through it, because you feel at the time that actually you're not going to be happy again, and you don't want to be happy again, because that almost feels like you're accepting that loss. But you can, and it's perfectly fine to smile again and laugh again, and to build a life around it. I mean, grief's something that you never move past. You actually just learn to accept it as part of you and your life, and I think that for me was really part of the healing, as moving on. And some days I can talk about it, some days I can't. Today's a good day, which is great. And I think to be able to help others accept it as part of their life story, as a chapter of their life, and to not necessarily put it in a box and put a lid on it, which is what I try to do with these pictures. So, some families obviously have them and then keep them for themselves. Others actually frame them and put them in their homes, and share their this is our full family, and because they're very much still with Rowan will always be my second daughter. That will never ever change. So to have that and watch them kind of, in fact, I have one amazing family who've come back year after year. So they've now got portraits of their little boy growing up with their living daughter, and they get to see him grow up through these pictures, which is just such an incredible thing to be able to give. And and I think if I can, and this has always been my kind of driving force, is that if it helps one person, it's totally worth my time.
Absolutely, completely agree. So listen, thank you so much for sharing that story. It's incredibly powerful, and I'm sure that it will touch a lot of people that are watching it today. Before we kind of talk about your business and the growth of the business and where you are now, do you just want to talk a little bit about, I know before we started filming we were talking about the current legislation in the UK and what that looks like, and again I think that's something that most people aren't aware of, and it's not really spoken about, and it's only actually if you go through something like that you then become aware of what those challenges are.
Yeah, sure. So obviously when we're born we're given a birth certificate, and when you die you're given a death certificate. And there obviously has to be some kind of gestational cut-off for that to happen. And it's 24 weeks. Unfortunately, Rowan actually died at 23 weeks and 4 days. So unfortunately, she's not listed anywhere. There is a stillbirth register, but that's for children over 24 weeks. If a child is born any gestation breathing, takes one breath, doesn't matter how old they are, if they've taken a breath, they're born, they have a birth certificate, and then they would subsequently have a death certificate. But I actually found that really, really hard, that there was no record of Rowan at all, anywhere.
It's unbelievable. You wouldn't expect to be the case at all.
No, you wouldn't. And like you're saying, you wouldn't know that was actually the case unless you went through something, like this, a child loss, because it's not something that's really spoken about.
Is that just in the UK? Or is that kind of, how does that fare against other countries? Presumably it's all different.
It is all different, and it's caught up with other legislation as well. It's not something that's likely to change at the moment in the UK for various reasons. Actually, one of the mothers who I've just recently done a shadow picture for has just pushed through new legislation in America that actually...
Incredible.
Yeah, just amazing. In fact, it's the mother who has the son who I've done shadow pictures kind of in consecutive years for. Absolutely incredible. A group of parents have really fought for this so that their children can be acknowledged. And it seems like such a small thing to actually have your child's name on a piece of paper, a certificate somewhere. But actually, in decades to come, my family will look back and Rowan won't be there and they would never know. And I think it kind of, for me, it's not just about people knowing her name, but if in decades to come, one of my ancestors, I think they're still called ancestors when you go that way, suffers child loss, they might actually find some kind of solace and they will actually, I'm not alone and this has happened before, and that actually, oh look, she's got 2 other children, and started her own business and was successful and found happiness afterwards, and kind of learned how to live with that.
Yeah.
You know,
That's such a powerful message. And what you said about getting through it somehow it really stuck with me, because when someone experiences a traumatic time like that, there must be so many pressures on, when am I going to start to feel better? Should I feel like this? What should I be feeling? But as you described, it really is getting through it and accepting it and learning to live with it, that it seems like you've grown such strength, and then supporting other people through that same experience. So I know when we were chatting earlier, you said not everyone is sort of born strong, it's from a life experience, and it seems like you've really taken something so horrible and hard for you to go through and turned it into not a positive, but something that empowered you to shine light in other people's dark times, which is very, very lovely.
Yeah, I mean, learning to accept it was really the only way for me to be able to move past it. And everybody is different and everybody grieves differently, and there is absolutely no right or wrong. And I've said this a couple of times afterwards, actually out of all my children, Rowan is the one that's taught me the most.
Wow.
And I never actually spoke to her at all. There's so much I've learned about who I am, what I'm capable of, about gratitude, about having a look at what I have and actually being so grateful. And even grateful for her story, because actually without experiencing that and being lucky enough to call her my daughter, so many other things wouldn't have happened. It's not a positive, but there are so many positive things that can come from it.
Yeah,
Brilliant
it's a
way to
great
put
way
it.
to look at life. Absolutely. Do you feel that experience has been significant in starting your own business?
Yes, I do. I think you suddenly realise, actually, one, how short life is,
Yeah.
and that traumatic things do happen to you and can happen to you, and that not just for other people, that they can be part of your reality as well. But that, you've just you've got to go for what you love to do and what you want to do, and it might not work. But you might end up doing something that you don't want to do, and that might not work either. So you might as well go for it. So it's. I think it has been really pivotal, and it showed me the strength that I had no idea that I had. When it happens, when something like that happens, you just think, well, this is it. Like, how can I ever get past this? And then as time slowly goes on, you think, actually, how am I getting past this? And why am I feeling better? And how am I feeling better? And suddenly you think, and that's kind of what underpins what I do, really, is to try and help people pass those pain points. And I know we were talking earlier about actually when I was a child, how really shy I was. And that's still in there somewhere a little bit, but people struggle to believe it now. But I was really, really shy, and part of what I do with the design agency is actually to help people break down that communication barrier.
Yeah.
It felt like, for me, I was living behind glass, and I think a lot of businesses are doing that. Not really understanding why or how that glass is there, but it's how to help them understand themselves so they can communicate better. And I think quite a lot of the time that's part of the problem. It's not that they don't have a brilliant product or a great team, it's actually they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. And if you can teach somebody that, suddenly they've got so much to say, and people are listening because it means something suddenly.
It's authentic.
Exactly. So that's kind of what underpins why I do what I do, and that it manifests in lots of different ways, and supporting charities is one of those ways that I like to try and give back and use my experiences to help other people.
Unbelievable. In all areas of your life, you're spreading positivity and supporting others.
I do my best.
What a way to live. It's a very powerful way to do it, and you only have one life, and it's very cliche to say, but at the same time incredibly true. And it's those decisions along the way that make the biggest difference. So I honestly take my hat off to you.
Have you got any coping strategies, any books that you've read, anything that has kind of been influential on your path to kind of help you get through?
Zoe Clark-Coates, who's the CEO, along with her husband Andy of the charity, were a massive support to me. And she's written a number of books now, of which I'm in at least one of them. We'll share a little bit of our story in there. But really, I think there's two main things. And it doesn't matter what the trauma is. It can be grief, it can be something completely different. But the two things that really helped me was to feel everything.
Yeah.
Don't try and shut it away. Don't try and pretend you're okay. And some of the feelings that you'll feel won't feel very nice.
Yeah.
And not just in, I feel sad or I feel angry, but like when the moment came, when Rowan passed away, I felt relief. And then I felt massive guilt.
Yeah.
But feeling those things and trying to understand, well, why do I feel like that? And saying, it's okay. Whatever emotion your body is giving
It's
you,
okay.
It's okay.
And being honest with yourself as well to feel those.
Yeah. If you hide them, they just fester.
Yeah.
And any emotion you feel is okay, but to truly feel it and sit with it for a bit, not for too long, because I don't think that's very helpful either, but to sit with it and talk.
Yeah.
Talking massively.
Hence why you're here today,
helps.
because I think, it's incredible.
And it's not always easy.
Yeah.
But it helps. Even, we lost Rowan in 2015, so it's been a little bit of time passing now, but actually it's still not easy to talk about, but it's still like therapy to me to talk about it. And it's wonderful to say her name out loud, because I don't often get to do that anymore. But yeah, talking is good for me, but it's also good for, hopefully, somebody listening. And if it's just one person, then it's totally worth me and the nerves being here and talking and being open today. So yeah, talking is hugely beneficial, and that can be with a friend or a doctor or a therapist, and I spoke to all of them. And they were all helpful in their own way, but to just try and get it out and try and understand your responses to things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a taboo subject, and I guess along with things like miscarriage, people just don't talk about them, even to have the stigma of sharing before your 12-week scan, for example. People don't do that. And I always thought, do you know what, with me, I would prefer to do the opposite, because actually if something happened, I know that I'd want everyone around me to know that, so that I had that support network there. But it's just interesting how there's still a lot of stigma, I think, around these kind of awful things that can happen, which unfortunately are part of life, a horrendous part of life. But like you very rightly say, it's how you deal with that, how you overcome it, and how you can give back through your experience to help others.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think the 12-week rule, I don't know where it's written down or why it exists, but it's never made much sense to me, because then you've got two options. You either tell somebody you were pregnant
or pretend it never happened,
or you keep it inside, and both of those things are awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think to be honest and open about what's happening is always better, because I think that you're just setting yourself up for a bit of a trap there otherwise, really. So
absolutely.
Support networks are everything, and I honestly think from being open and sharing your story today, you will have offered a little bit of that comfort as a support network to other people out there listening.
I hope so, because it's a lonely place.
Yeah.
It's a lonely place, and I think, and I found this quite often as well, that there were times when I didn't want to talk about it, because actually what happens then is, obviously you've been living with it and trying to deal with it for however many weeks, months, years, and you're telling somebody for the first time and suddenly they're really upset, and you end up comforting them. Well, this is the wrong way round, but that's what happens. So then you kind of keep it to yourself, because it's easier not to see somebody else's grief, because that's hard as well, because it's like yours but mirrored.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult as well. So I think breaking down the barriers of people needing to keep it secret is so key to helping people survive it and go on to actually a certain amount of acceptance and finding happiness again, really.
Is there anything that employers can do to be able to help people who are going through these kind of things? Because it's really challenging, isn't it? It doesn't always come under a typical, especially with something like miscarriage, it wouldn't typically come under bereavement leave. It wouldn't typically come under, you certainly wouldn't want to take it as a holiday, but from an employer point of view, what can companies do to try and support people who are in those situations?
It's absolutely vitally important that employers do and try and understand and give the time and space needed. I was actually working for a company at the time called Grassroots and ended up taking off. I think I initially tried to come back after 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They basically said, take as much time as you need, fully paid. And it was one less thing I had to worry about, and it meant so. At the time, I was just
amazing.
like, great. Looking back,
Yeah.
it was one of the most important things that happened to me.
Yeah.
And I ended up going back, and I remember within a few hours, one of the guys in the studio was singing Happy Birthday. And I just fell apart, and I was like, I've got to go back, I can't be here. And they were like, fine, go, we'll see you whenever you're ready. And it took another month before I was ready to go back. But really, like you're saying, with miscarriage, quite a lot of employers expect women back. That's if the women have even been honest to say what's happened.
Exactly.
I mean, I was quite far into the pregnancy. I mean, I expand quite a lot when I'm pregnant, so there was no hiding it. But yeah, they were expected back into work the week after. And that's really hard, because then that puts a lot of pressure on women, and then they probably would have to go off sick, which then can cause financial problems. Obviously, the parents are grieving at this point, and it can then cause problems within the marriage, and it really escalates very, very quickly. When you're thinking about grief, financial strains, not being able to pay the mortgage, suddenly you're arguing, nobody's coping very well, and it really, really quickly breaks down. And it was only afterwards, when I look back, how pivotal my employer's understanding was in my recovery. It was so important, and I couldn't thank them enough, really, at the time, and even now. Made such a difference to me. It's really important.
Incredible. You had I
was really lucky.
Such a supportive team there, willing to give you what you needed, which is the way it should be. And I think that's why so many employers and companies out there need to truly modernize the way they do things, and the different reasons for sick pay or holiday pay, or why is it limited to those things in the employee handbook. I think we all live a life that's very colourful and agile, and different things happen that you don't expect. You can't live by the book and abide by the book all the time. And I think companies almost need to throw that out the window and just react to what each human needs in that moment. So it's wonderful you had that support there. And I truly hope that other companies can evolve and become more modern and agile, and also offer that, because it's, as you said, a crucial part to recovery.
Huge. And I think a lot of companies get it wrong in that they forget that actually employees are human. I know that sounds really silly.
No, it's true.
Well, this is your role. It's
not a number.
I'm a person.
Someone's in their shoes. How would you feel? What you? Because that's what you need to be. That's what you need to do for them right now. And it's just about thinking of it in that regard, really.
And treating everybody as an individual. That you might have a rule book, and we're always talking about ripping up that rule book, because you're right, it's about the individual. I know that when we had our first daughter, our eldest daughter, she was in intensive care when she was born, and she was on a life support machine for a good month. And it was touch and go whether she was going to make it at the time. And my husband worked for a very, very large company, and had 2 weeks of maternity, and that ended, and he was expected back at work. And we had our daughter in intensive care. We were visiting twice a day, because we weren't allowed to stay because of the level of care that she needed, which was very difficult. And obviously, how can he possibly go back to work in a job that was commuting for 2.5 hours? The stress that put on us, and actually it was then he took the decision to not do that. But then there was the financial implication of, we're not paying you for those 6 weeks. And no matter how small we were as a company in the beginning, we always said whatever anybody needs, especially when they're kind of on maternity leave, or when it's their first child, or you just don't know, you never know what's going to happen. And that's always been important to write into contracts and things like that, that we need to make sure that support is there for the person as and when they need it, because different people will need different support at different times.
Absolutely. Well, it makes me shudder to think what you went through. I mean, what your daughter thankfully was okay, but what if she wasn't and your husband was missed that moment,
I know.
those last moments?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just...
For trying to earn money to pay the mortgage.
It's horrendous. It's just
yeah.
ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It is.
You shouldn't be made to ever make those choices.
And I think if very small companies can do it, like we did in the very early stages, then any employer can do it, especially the larger corporates.
It's important. You can make it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been magical to talk to you today, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
It really has. Thank you.
For having me here. It's been a real pleasure. It's quite a new experience for me. But yeah, I hope that having this conversation has helped some people, some parents, some company owners to perhaps think of it differently and be there when their employees need them most.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.